Welcome to North County Philanthropy Council's quarterly program. My name is Jocelyn Wyndham, co-chair of the Programs Committee and interim associate vice president of philanthropy at Cal State San Marcos. Thank you for joining us for our program on creating new sustainable revenue models when the world has been flipped, part 1. Today we'll be hearing from panelists who will share their challenges and success stories. In October, we invite you to join us for part 2 of this discussion, where you will have a chance to bring a specific challenge your organization is facing related to funding and work through solutions with peers and experts during our Solvathon. I know we are all stretched thin, and many of you, like me, probably have children Zooming at home in the other room with their teachers at this very moment. With all the demands on your time, we're so thankful to have you with us this morning. We will have a facilitated panel discussion with ample time for Q&A. If you have questions during any part of the program, please type them into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Karen Henken, who will introduce our panelists. Karen is co-founder of the supplychainprogram.org and lecturer at University of San Diego. She is a leader in focusing social impact and system change through social innovation and entrepreneurship. Thank you, Karen. It's all yours.
Thank you, Jocelyn, and hopefully I'm going to be able to figure out how to share my screen here and have it work. So in a minute, I'm going to make sure can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Welcome everybody, and this is an area that I am very passionate about. One of the reasons that I have been so involved and passionate about social entrepreneurship, as you will hear from one of our speakers, is I've been on the board of Kitchens for Good for the last 6 years, and it has been an inspiration for me for how revenue models and sustainable revenue can really change the game in the nonprofit arena, as well as getting to know some of our other panelists and the extraordinary work they're doing in a variety of manners of for-profit social enterprises and new ways of looking at revenue models. So in today's discussion, we're going to look at concepts and practical ideas to help you identify and enhance funding opportunities and support growth amidst volatility. I think volatility is really the key word of what we're all experiencing right now. And yet I know all of you as nonprofit leaders cannot stop and give up. You need to find new ways to grow your organizations to ensure that you're enhancing impact, and the demands are even greater on your organization. So we're going to have 3 different stories today from a for-profit social enterprise, a nonprofit social enterprise, and a foundation on how they've looked at new ways to really adapt and pivot and find new revenue models. Every one of these organizations has faced enormous hurdles. They've had to pivot and adapt. They've had to work with new realities, which are changing, as we know, every day and oftentimes every minute. And they've had to find new sources of revenue. So our panelists today are Jen Gilmore, CEO of Kitchens for Good, where I've served on the board for nearly 6 years. Scott Henderson, who has a phenomenal for-profit social enterprise called Doing Good Works, and I met Scott about 6 years ago when I was a co-panelist with him at University of San Diego. And I'm so inspired by how he has grown this organization as he is serving the needs of foster youth in our region. And Lisa Rodman, who is doing incredibly creative work in environmental education for children and now a much wider community because of her work and her pivoting with the Agua, Hedionda Lagoon Foundation. So this is our reality. We are pivoting and adapting in every aspect of our lives. I'm sure every one of you can relate to the pictures here, whether you are a parent working at home and teaching children while you're also trying to work, whether you're teaching on Zoom, as I am, across the world, visiting relatives and elderly family members who are perhaps in senior centers and nursing homes where you can't touch them, but you can see them behind windows, going to restaurants outdoors, and so forth and so on. This is our reality. I had never heard the term VUCA until a few weeks ago. It stands for something I'm sure you can all relate to, even if you haven't heard the term before. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I'm sure that, hang on a second, is my screen still showing? It says sharing is paused. Okay. I'm sure that every one of you can relate to these terms. What does it mean? Volatility. Changes due to COVID are taking place every day, so unpredictable, so dramatic, and so fast. Uncertainty. No one can predict what's going to happen when, whether we're going to have a vaccination, whether we're going to be in lockdown, whether we're going to get out of lockdown. The flexibility and adaptability and uncertainty is very, very stressful. Complexity. Every aspect of our lives has been impacted. And ambiguity. Because there are no best practices, we are in the unknown. So we are literally making this up as we go along. There's an expression, and if I have it correct, building the plane as we're flying it, or learning to fly the plane as we're building it. Coronavirus changes everything. Okay, I just heard that my screen is stopped, so I'm going to go back and start sharing again. I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened here. Can you see it now? Okay. So I'm going to go back to the VUCA slide a minute. So I will review VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So what is our current reality? We're going to have our three speakers talk today about sources of revenue that they perhaps thought were sacred, donors they always thought would be there, grant sources, funding. It has been literally disrupted in ways that were never expected. Whether you're in the hospitality industry, which a very large percentage of social enterprises across the US, in restaurant business, in baking, in catering, gone. Promotional products that companies were always going to buy, gone. Funders suddenly disrupted, whether their sources of funding were gone or their priorities changed. Global supply chain has been impacted. If you look at our food banks across the country, where they might have gotten large amounts of donated food before, that supply chain has been totally disrupted. Of course, our healthcare supply chain has been disrupted, and it goes on from there. And then how do you get new audiences? We are all exhausted by Zoom. We've had so many Zoom meetings. We are being asked to support so many things. And how do you get attention when everyone's vying for attention and digital overload is a reality? So we're going to talk about some new ways to attract new sponsors, donors, and audiences as well. I know you've all heard about trying to think outside the box, but this is really, really a time we need to think outside the box. We cannot do things the way we always have because nothing will change if we do. So we need to think about going beyond the usual suspects. For those of you who know this movie, it was a phenomenal movie. And we need to think about how we can use creativity and teamwork to get beyond the usual suspects. What do I mean by that? You need to look at your current ecosystem, the collaborators and stakeholders you have, and how do you expand that? How can you creatively seek new sources of revenue, enhance impact, and successfully pivot? You may not be able to do things the way that you have in the past. They have really changed, and the old ways, even what was old a month ago, may still not be working. So come together with your team. Always use a team to decide how to create and look at new problems, to address solutions, and figure out how can we do things differently. They will be your army to help you combat VUCA. Start with fall in love with the problem. One of the problems with nonprofits in general, and with many of the ways that businesses are run as well, is we jump to a problem without understanding the depth of it. What are the root causes of the problem? We love to create a solution without even knowing, do we really understand the problem? This is one of my favorite books, by the way, one I'd highly recommend that all of you read. A person who comes from the tech world and then went into economic development with USAID and Mercy Corps, and really looking at how do we move the needle by understanding the problem first before we go to a solution. We need to be ready to pivot and adapt all the time. One of the most important things about looking at a problem is understanding what is real and relevant today. Something that might have been relevant last January, last February, a year ago, is not what is a priority today. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of where are the most essential issues today, where are you on that? Have you identified a problem that is truly relevant to your funders, to your stakeholders, to your beneficiaries today, because their reality has changed? How do you look at problem solving with new insights and creative approaches? and how can you and your team organize to pivot, because you need to have a lot of different points of view. Get somebody from the program design side, get somebody from the social work side, get somebody from the funding side, get your stakeholders and beneficiaries themselves involved to say, how can we pivot to solve this problem? Work in teams. Look at a group of stakeholders and users that maybe you haven't talked to before. Even if you can't go out and talk to them, interviewing them on the street, you can get people on Zoom, you can get people on the phone, but get their input. Don't just talk to the usual suspects, because that will simply reiterate what you already knew. You need to reach beyond that. Some examples of successful pivots. In the very early days of the coronavirus epidemic, when there wasn't enough hand sanitizer, Louis Vuitton, known obviously for the most luxurious products in the world, pivoted and repurposed one of their factories to develop hand sanitizer. A Los Angeles restaurant chain that creates healthy food that was suddenly closed down found new sources of funding and delivered healthy meals to people in need who couldn't get out and buy them themselves. One of the most unlikely partnerships, Apple and Google, who are typically arch enemies, came together to look at contract tracing solutions together. So successfully pivoting by working in new ways and finding new approaches to designing and delivering your solution. We all know about online fundraising. Maybe somebody's wearing a tuxedo on the top and shorts on the bottom. On the right is one of the founding board members of Kitchens for Good and of DC Central Kitchen, Robert Egger. The Canine Companions for Independence in San Diego had one of the most successful fundraisers through a virtual event. So learn what others are doing and learn to bring that into your own organization. And then how do you have resources that you can repurpose? We all probably know about the story of the San Diego Convention Center, unfortunately closed down because nobody is having large gatherings, but repurposed to a homeless shelter. And then Petco Park, now booked out for most of the rest of the year for drive-in graduations, awesome fundraisers. This is one of the early ones that was done with Feeding San Diego for online drive-in or virtual events that who would have thought that that was how we would be using large sports arenas. So as you think about co-creation, think about how to work together with the community you're serving, get their input, and create your solutions based on real needs. That is how you'll find new sustainable revenue models. I now turn it back to our speakers, and I'm going to introduce you to Jen Gilmore, the CEO of Kitchens for Good.
Thank you, Karen. So if you can stop sharing your screen, I'll go ahead and start on mine.
I did stop sharing. My screen has stopped sharing. Okay.
You're good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jen Gilmore, the CEO of Kitchens for Good. And Kitchens for Good is a San Diego-based social enterprise where food changes lives. When we first got together, we decided that there were 4 issues that we needed to address. In the United States, 40% of all the food that's produced ends up in the landfill, while 1 in 7 San Diegans do not have enough to eat. If you've been incarcerated or have experienced homelessness, your unemployment can be upwards to 70%. And a lot of nonprofits struggle on a regular basis to, I'm sorry, I'm getting text, to ensure that they have enough resources. And Kitchens for Good thought our solution could be to take this unwanted food, to use it in a job training program where the outcome would be meals for the hungry, and all of this would be supported in part by social enterprise and earned revenue. Since 2015, we just celebrated our 5th year anniversary. Since 2015, in the last 5 years, we've prepared more than 350 individuals for jobs in the culinary industry. More than 85% of them have remained employed, and 81% have received wage increases or promotions since graduating. And we've launched 3 apprenticeship programs, one of them as a cook, baker, and food service manager. So we are heavily hospitality. In terms of social enterprises, where we fall on the spectrum, if you look at the purple, we fall into that category, closer to the blue, in that we are a nonprofit that has an earned revenue stream. The reason we wanted to operate as a social enterprise primarily was because it created an opportunity for our students and our apprentices to gain that critical real-world job experience or on-the-job training. We can be the best teachers in the world, but if you show up late or you talk back or you have a difficulty taking direction, you're not going to be able to keep your job. And so we really wanted to create this environment where we could provide on-the-job training for our apprentices. In addition to that, we saw some other benefits that included diversifying our funding resources so that we had some consistent income and weren't as susceptible to philanthropic funding ebbs and flows. And we also wanted to provide our stakeholders and supporters with another way to invest in the organization. So our social enterprise has three arms. One of them is catering. Through the catering enterprise, we would prepare, we hosted about 350 events annually that ranged anywhere from a 25-person intimate dinner at their home to a 500, 1,500 person event. We also operated the restaurant Cafe Luna at the Moonlight Amphitheater during their summer seasons, and typically ran 5 shows where we would do concessions and all the food and beverages out of the restaurant there. Our final enterprise stream was meal contracts, where we would prepare meals for after-school programs and also for senior centers. Prior to COVID, our revenue model was about 47% social enterprise earned revenue, and about 53% of that was coming from philanthropic revenue. Prior to COVID, our total earned revenue for the 4 or so years of operation was about $4.5 million. So COVID hit. And I wanted to kind of just go through sort of the timeline that Kitchens for Good experienced COVID. And I think it's really important to underline that prior to any indication that there was going to be a global pandemic, Kitchens for Good was taking steps to prepare for a disaster. We had disaster plans in place. We had secured a line of credit in case there was an emergency. In February, we started to hear about other companies who were developing pandemic response plans. And so we went through our disaster plan, and we had earthquakes, mudslides, floods, evacuations for other reasons, but no global pandemic response plan. And so we spent about 2 weeks in February really identifying what would we do in the event there is a global pandemic, we're unable to come into the office. And that work really allowed us to act quickly when businesses started to shut down. In March, with the closure of the San Diego Unified School District, we moved all of our classes online. The staff started working remotely, and we really increased meal production. And the reason we did that was for twofold. One of them, the main reason, is because we saw that there was going to be a swell of demand for meals. With people losing their work, becoming furloughed, and schools closing, about 100,000 kids in San Diego Unified School District were no longer going to be having easy access to the free and reduced breakfast and lunches. And so we very much wanted to increase our meal production. The other reason we did that is because it's very important for the organization to remain relevant. And we needed to demonstrate that we were a viable organization that could respond to a disaster. We also started calling all of our stakeholders. We wanted to let them know that we were here, that our work was critical, and we wanted to touch base with them. Throughout those calls, we were able to, for multi-year pledges, our funders offered to advance cash or to fulfill those pledges earlier than expected, and we had that happen on several occasions. And that really assisted us in terms of preserving cash. And with the preservation of cash comes choices. And we really wanted to be able to weather COVID-19 and come out the other end being able to help with the recovery and also to have choices. And so the preservation of cash was really critical to us. And then we gave it our all to secure a PPP loan and to position ourselves to receive one, which we were successful in doing. In April, we pivoted our entire catering team to career development and meal production. So they went from selling banquets and buffets to assisting alumni in securing services that they would need as they were experiencing unemployment. So previously I mentioned that our employment rate was greater than 85% pre-COVID. Post-COVID, our employment rate among graduates and apprentices went to about 18%. In May, we made the decision to not renew our lease at the Jacobs Center. We really felt that we needed to consolidate, and that at that time, the writing was on the wall that large gatherings were likely not going to be permitted in the near future. And we also reassessed our mission and our work. And we decided to double down that the work that we're doing in terms of workforce development and job training is going to be essential, not only pre-COVID, but also as a part of the recovery as people are working to make themselves economically whole again. And in June, we had to make the very, very difficult decision to lay off our catering team. As all of this was unfolding, there started to be a prevalent culture that was percolating throughout Kitchens for Good. And it was really kind of coming from this value that if we come through all of this and we end up doing everything the exact same way we did prior to COVID, we will have really wasted an opportunity. We needed to take this time to assess all of our programs, to revisit our mission, our values as an organization, and to make some difficult decisions if the situation called for it. In terms of revenue, our revenue model went from like a 50-50 to earned revenue dropped to about 11%. Catering events folded and doesn't look like it's going to be coming back in the near future. And then Moonlight Amphitheater had to cancel their 40th season, and so there wasn't any earned revenue coming through that. Conversely, where we did see an uptick with social enterprise was through meal contracts. We went from preparing about 100 meals a day to more than 1,000 meals a day to about 10,000 meals a week at the height. So these are a couple of images of just our life post-COVID. As you'll see, our meals are a lot different. We are masked up. We are no-touch meal distribution and a whole lot more heat and eat as opposed to congregate meals. And then as a bright spot in September, we were able to relaunch classes. Initially, I mentioned that we moved to an online class format. It is tough to teach class via Zoom. And so we felt that it was going to be very, very important for us to get the apprentices back into the classroom. So in this video, you'll see the apprentices in this photo. They have masks on, there's tape on the floor, they are socially distanced, temperature checks, but it has lifted the entire organization's spirits and filled our sails to be back doing this mission work. So what's next? As I mentioned, we opted to not renew our lease at the Jacobs Center. We are going to be centralizing operations in a central kitchen, previous to COVID, our model was sort of a decentralized model. We wanted a lot of kitchens because we recognized the individuals we were serving are tethered geographically. That's not feasible at this point. We have embarked on developing a long-term strategic plan with the help of social venture partners, and we've just started that process. And again, it goes back to being able to conserve cash has allowed us to have some time to really engage in meaningful long-term strategic planning. And we are very, very excited about the future at this point. The other thing that we've done is really started to reimagine our social enterprise. We are looking at, as you know, or Karen mentioned, there are a lot of social enterprises out there. A lot of them are in hospitality, food service. And so we are collecting tons of data, what's working, what's not working. We're doing our own research and starting to develop a whole lot of ideas around what the next iteration of Kitchens for Good earned revenue stream is going to look like. So the lessons that we've learned that have been most poignant have been have a plan. We have a plan. It really helped us in terms of when we had to execute working remotely to have everything in place to make that happen, and so on and so on. With classes, we knew that if we had to move to online classes, we were going to have a way to present online classes that was robust and engaging, and we created partnerships with Ruby. We also created a partnership with San Diego Market Box, and they sent food to the apprentices' houses every week so that they would have product to practice on. We opted to make decisions very quickly. Our rationale behind that was we didn't want to do a slow drip. If we needed to rip the Band-Aid off quickly and to ensure that we would have choices later. And the other thing that we really invested in as an organization was to increase our conversational capacity. These are tough times, and especially to throw strategic planning into the middle of a global pandemic. There are a lot of ideas, there's a lot of emotion, and we took the time to really invest in finding that sweet spot as we're having conversations, so that as we started to move towards playing to win, we would ask more questions and inquire. We have a saying here now, and it's like, I really hate your idea, so I should probably get to know it a lot better. And we're working from that space. Or conversely, I really love my idea, so I should probably ask why you don't. And that wraps up what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions now, or we can save them till later.
Sandra, are you going to moderate taking questions?
We do not currently have any questions. If anyone out there has a question, please type it in the Q&A, and we will be happy to address that, or we could save them for the end.
I have a question for Jen. Who are some of the newer funders or perhaps increased funders that you have seen with the result of your pivot towards hunger relief and some of the other work that you've done in the last few months? And what were some of the surprises, both good and bad, that came with that?
I would say, you know, the San Diego Foundation did an amazing job in creating a COVID response fund, and we were fortunate to benefit from that fund. We also did some things internally where we pivoted from, we used to do tons of in-person events. Dinners for Good was an example, and we would have 4 Dinners for Good a year, and those were cooking demonstrations. We took all of those online and crossed our fingers, and we've actually been able to secure more funds than we were able to when we had them in person. And the overhead expenses have decreased significantly. I think in terms of, for us, it's the uncertainty of no longer having an earned revenue stream. Despite the ups and downs with catering, you were able to project out because you had events booked, and so we were able to manage cash flow. Going to a predominantly philanthropic revenue stream created a whole lot of uncertainty in terms of scenario planning initially, and until but San Diego's philanthropic community, and this has been demonstrated time and time again, steps up in times of disaster. We've seen that historically, and they rose to the occasion once again.
Okay. There's also a question here from, 2 questions. Should I just read them, Sandra, or do you want to?
Go.
So,
All yours.
Okay, from Javier Guerrero in Coastal Roots Farms. In hindsight 2020, what would you have done differently? What were your biggest errors?
You know, I'm really, really proud with how the organization responded. We had some fits and starts with, we had a little bit of an identity crisis. And so what we haven't done was have our plan B in the event one earned revenue stream just goes to hell. And in this case, we had all 3 suffer simultaneously, and we didn't necessarily, beyond philanthropic revenue, have a plan B. And so there's been a little bit almost like this identity crisis where you start to question, we're like, are we a social enterprise? Should we move to be a traditional nonprofit? We're training people to work in the hospitality industry. Are we training them for jobs that are obsolete at this point? And so had we had some of these conversations prior, I think we could have moved a little faster with some of the strategic planning. However, there is something very healing and therapeutic to go through a strategic planning process from the very, very beginning and do that SWOT analysis and recommit to your work, to your mission, and carve a pathway forward.
Great, thank you. Next question. How did you manage to drive employee mentality to change over the pandemic and not only try to survive and come out of it doing what you were doing before? So basically to survive and essentially thrive going forward. How did you work with how did you manage your employees' mindset, spirit, whatever?
So we moved to remote working, and we've always been outcome-based management. So it's never been about time at desk. It's been about managing outcomes. I will say that our team is incredibly well adapted to change. We're a relatively young organization, and we already had a joke that says, you know, hey, if you don't like it, give it a week because it's probably going to be different. So the team was somewhat adapted, but this was raw. You know, having to lay off team members is hard, and we were vulnerable. You know, the other day we had a Zoom all staff meeting, and there was loads of laughter and joking. And I got off the Zoom call, and I talked to our apprentice coordinator. I said, Jordan, you know, that was actually a fun meeting. She's like, yes, the first one we've had where we didn't cry in like a month. So we've just been very transparent as an organization, very honest, as inclusive as we possibly could, and capitalized on us all being pretty used to a whole lot of change.
Thank you. Great. If there are no more questions, and I just want to say as a board member, of course, you know, Jen, you've heard me say this, but I've been so inspired and impressed by how quickly you all pivoted, the sense of optimism, the creativity, the not giving up attitude of Kitchens for Good. at a time when, and you know, this is so true, the world of social enterprise, which the predominant nonprofit social enterprise arena or ecosystem in the US is hospitality. More than any other industry, that is what has driven the growth of social enterprise across the US, and it has been thriving and growing, and it was upended literally overnight. So there is a lot of recreation that has to go on, and Kitchens for Good has done a phenomenal job of that. So with that, I will now turn this over to Scott Henderson, who is co-founder and one of my favorite titles, Head Dot Connector for Doing Good Works. And he will share, I hope you'll share as many of the stories as I've heard lately, Scott, about how you started, your incredible early success, your pivot on March 13th, if I remember that story. And we encourage, you know, we've asked our speakers to be super candid, because this is a time that there were too many unexpected things, and how do they respond? So I will leave you to it, Scott.
Great, thank you, Karen. Just want to confirm everyone can both hear me and see the screen. Getting
You are good. Thumbs up.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Well, again, Karen, thank you. It's a pleasure to join my fellow panelists and the team here. Jen, hats off to you and the work that you guys have done at Kitchens for Good. We've kind of parallel timelines as far as working in the social enterprise space, and yeah, I think that for the group that's listening, you'll hear a lot of similarities in the need for focus on mission and the ability to bring a team around the concept of a pivot. So for those of you who don't know, I'll talk a little bit about Doing Good Works. And yes, Karen, I'll share some very raw stories with the group as well. So we are a for-profit social enterprise. We got founded in April of 2015. So we are a California benefit corporation. Both my co-founder and I came from the for-profit business. Jordan Bartlett came from the insurance industry. He actually has a background coming through the foster care system and was adopted. And we met really with the idea of how do we come together, use a for-profit business to address social change, and in particular for those young people that had been affected by the foster care system or that had tried to navigate the system and unfortunately had fallen through the cracks. So we put this business plan together, and the thought behind it was really, you know, how do we use this for-profit models? And some of it was in kind of understanding what happened to the market and the financial crash that we had in 2007 and 2008. I was in the business of supply chain and packaging design. The world was adopting to the world of Bluetooth technology for headsets, and we were selling hundreds of millions of units across the country. And at the same time, I was sitting on several boards, one of Royal Family Kids Camp, which was a foster camp or camps for kids from the foster care system. And the executive director came to me at the time and said, you know, we are very grant and donation dependent. And those things are starting to dry up and become more and more of a challenge for us as we would want to expand our mission and the need during this very critical time when things are tough. Fast forward now 12, 13 years, and here we are in 2020 facing very, very similar and even more challenging times economically, and times when folks are really unsure of the situation. So, you know, our response at the time was to look at how we can leverage a for-profit model and continue to do good. And really the idea, as we've talked about, was really to focus then in on the foster care community. our vision at Doing Good Works is that all young people have experienced foster care have an equal chance to succeed and feel empowered. That component remains key to our success through this 2020 pandemic and challenge. And I'll go back to that in a few slides, but really that has been our guiding principle as we got started and have had some very lean times, and that continues to be our focus as we've gone through the multiple pivots that we've had to in this last year to both maintain revenue streams as well as maintain relevance in the marketplace. And again, the mission, as we've talked about, is to use basic transactions to improve lives. We've talked about using a transaction to create a human transformation. And the other component is critical for us in our values, really is summed up in that last line of be kind, love more, and do good. And it is really our goal to leave a mark on the folks that we are working with and in our communities, that they leave the work experience with us and take away an understanding of how to operate and be more kind in the community, love more to themselves, and then do good in the community. The operating principles for Doing Good Works, we adopted this very early on, and we've got a 10-20-30 operating model. 10% of our total corporate profits always go back into programs that help support foster youth. We do that with programs, Guardian Scholar programs on college campuses. We do that with community partners. Anybody or anywhere that we see a well-functioning support model for the foster community, we want to partner with and collaborate with those groups to provide funding through the profits that we generate. 20% of our time is really carved out for our employees to provide mentoring. And similar to what Jen had commented relative to Kitchens for Good, the amount of time, the job's important, and having access to a job is important, but a holistic approach to success is really what we identified as one of the prime needs for kids in the foster care system, and truly for those that haven't had much direction about how to show up for a job on time, how to work through stressful situations with a positive working attitude. And so we've carved out what is really functionally a full day out of our work week for our folks to mentor. A lot of our organization, we've got 5 folks that are CASA volunteers, and which is court-appointed special advocate. And as some of you may know, when court calls, they don't ask you to come in when it's convenient. They want you to be there immediately. So, and we react to that. There's a lot of times that we have set up meetings internally or with a client, and we have to cover for each other because we go take the meeting with the young person first and foremost. We want them to feel and know that that they're the most important part. So 20% of our time is spent to mentor, and then 30% of our employee base, we are committed as an organization that we will always hire 30% of our staff from the foster care community to make sure that we are always shoulder to shoulder and eyeball to eyeball with young people that we are working to change outcomes for. We want to hear it from them because they're the ones that have the experience or the things that we're looking to change or address in the system. So, and then it's certainly important to all of us is the environmental give back. Because we are in the promotional products business, we are very thoughtful and about the products that we present, and always looking for ways that we can provide an environmental impact, or a give back and impact with the products that we sell into the marketplace. We did become a certified B Corp in earlier part of this year, which was very exciting. That happened also in January, February. We went through the process. So we are both, like I said, a benefit corporation as a C Corp, as well as now a certified benefit corporation. And as our sustainability piece, we're focused very much on the education, entertainment, food and beverage, and healthcare. And I will jump into the pandemic approach when I talk about healthcare. And fortunately, we had these. As Karen mentioned, or maybe talked about, we were blessed to be on the Fortune 5000 list 2 years ago. In the 2000 ranking, we hit it again this year as 822 fastest growing companies in the United States. All of that was very exciting up until March. And really was March 13th. We were having this great success profile. We were meeting all of our growth goals. We were hiring. We had expansion plans into new geographies. We couldn't have asked for a better team or a better opportunity. And as Karen mentioned, by March 13th, my co-founder and I looked at each other and we're trying to figure out how to both get out from behind the organizational challenge of cost and what job I was going to go get. And it was really that real because as you can imagine, folks in the promotional products business, events were going on or not going on. We were big in colleges and college campuses were now void of students. There wasn't a whole big need for printing business cards or anything with a company name on it since nobody was actually seeing each other. So our model went from running about $500,000 a month to zero in about 48 hours. We spent, like I said, about 3 days trying to figure out what was going to be next. And at that particular point, the only thing moving, the only thing that was even being talked about was PPE. And because of my background in the supply chain industry, some of the experience that I had with folks and resources overseas, we called our customer, which happened to be Kaiser. I called all of the folks I could rally up on the phone and figure out if we could actually purchase and supply PPE. And we were blessed enough to be able to put those two things together. And for literally a period of 3 months, there was 4 of us from usually 6 o'clock in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night that did nothing but manage supply chain and orders and opportunities and get out and call anybody and everybody that we thought could be a customer for PPE product. That really led us to a 4-month, 5-month income stream that truly doubled our business in a single product line. And we were, again, just incredibly blessed to get there. We were able to keep everybody on our staff. We went to a complete remote model. And so, like I said, we managed that process up and through about June or July. We started to see some customers coming back in that time frame. And just as quickly as the PPE opportunity presented itself in about July, the marketplace was flooded with plenty of masks and gowns, and the supply chain had come back to normalization. And that market was over for us as well. So we are back to almost normal. We're about 30% behind projections as far as the day in, day out. But during that time, we acquired another social enterprise up in the Bay Area, which was a screen print business. We have continued to expand our geographies and markets. And I would suggest that the number one skill that we have garnered as an organization through this entire pandemic has been the ability to remain extremely flexible, to fail fast, and to keep a laser focus on the mission. We kind of joke about it internally that we're not necessarily we're kind of product and product agnostic. We really just focus on whatever it is that we can bring to market, do it very well, do it market competitive, and continue to drive our mission impact for and change outcomes for kids affected by the foster care system. So with that, I think I've covered hopefully most of the points. Karen, you let me know.
Thank you. Let me turn my video back on. Thank you so much, Scott. It's an inspiring story. So the first question we have is, it said, Scott, you asked some interesting questions in your job application. Would you share some of the more memorable answers you've received?
Yeah, so we ask a lot of our interns and folks really a response to be kind, love more, and do good. What does that mean to the applicant? And we have had some of the most amazing stories and amazing feel. And again, that's the underlying emotional component of what's made us as successful as we have been, is because we've got folks that are tied together culturally from a mission perspective. I think really the one that sticks out to me personally was a young lady that responded to what does love more. And for her, it was her personal journey of learning to love herself. A young woman who had come through some very challenging times and life upbringing and experiences, expressed to our organization how she had decided to love herself and wanted to use those skills and that understanding to go impact a community in a bigger way.
Thank you so much. Next question from Matt. I'm hoping I'm not butchering your name. Matt Kumaris from Boys and Girls Club of Vista. COVID is challenging enough, but have there been any new governance practices, discussions that help promote diversity, equity, and inclusion among staff and mentees during these difficult times?
Great question. Nothing specific to the COVID times. Because of my background in corporate, I've gone through a lot of the trainings. I actually talked to somebody on Sunday about this, around diversity and inclusion. And one of the reasons that we have doing in our title, because we know that good works, but doing is the main component. And so I'm very proud of the diversity within our organization, because it's also representative of the population that we're working with and for. And so, yeah, we've got a very diverse group, and continue to, it's part of that 30%, right, is the reason that we want to hire and have young people from the system represented in this organization, so that we are always in the front lines of that diversity challenge.
Great, thank you. Whoops, I hope I didn't unmute myself. I have a question. Just, you know, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and I was so inspired by your remarkable pivot, that story of March 13th, but it tied into what I talked about earlier, which is look beyond the usual suspects. And can you talk a little bit about that? How did you just pivot and decide who to reach out to? Kind of how do you think about networking to create new revenue streams for doing good works? And then as you said, even in July, what you had started up for 3 or 4 months and grew. And by the way, I just want to clarify, Scott mentioned, he said the Fortune 5000, not to take any credit away from you, but it's the Inc. 5000. And you are the only, Doing Good Works is the only social enterprise supporting foster youth on the Inc. 5000. And it's really remarkable. And they rose to number 822 because if I remember correctly, I'm sort of bragging on your behalf here, but you reached a $10 million revenue number with the PPE growth, if I have that correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. We were forecast to do about 5 or 6 million this year, and we're at a little over 10 at this point, and we believe we'll finish probably at 11 or 12 for the balance of the year.
But what I'm hearing you say is that it is really not looking at all the usual suspects, and who do you find, and, you know, you have one stream and then you have another and another. So how do you think about engaging in different networks, and how do you do that so effectively?
Yeah, Well, Karen, the head dot connector, right? And one of the things we joke about, obviously, internally, and I tell this very truly, I'm not smart enough to figure out new stuff. So I just try to connect really smart people with really good needs. And the marketplace will do that. I mean, this phone call and the folks that are on this both panel as well as that are on the call, it is that desire for collaboration, right? It's out there. We just don't typically do it. You don't typically see that in a for-profit model, right? You don't find folks wanting to work together, but there is this need, and certainly during these times, we know that there needs to be a change in the way that businesses work, the way that social impact is made, and so finding those folks for us, the B Labs certified companies, is really a hit list of folks that think collectively about having impact, whether it's social or environmental. And it is just in a matter of telling the story and finding folks that resonate with, and like, as I mentioned to you a long time ago, I mean, the reason we're in the promotional products business is it's a $30 billion industry. Everybody has a product with their name on it. It's a little smaller now, but then it was just real important for us to provide, market level pricing, levels of customer experience and customer service that were without a doubt as good as you could get in the industry, and do things that were typical of for-profit businesses. And then it was just a matter of scaling and telling the story, and not being afraid to reach out to different groups.
Thank you. And as I told Scott, one of the things that I want to do is steal his title of head dot connector, because I do believe in, and I think I also follow the example of networking. So I will put a shameless plug out here. And one of the reasons I wanted to have the three remarkable organizations on this call today is Doing Good Works. For all of you thinking about galas and fundraisers, and we're sending special promotional packages to key donors and so forth, but consider reaching out to Doing Good Works. I've used them several times in my work at University of San Diego, and the young people who are his customer service representatives, who are primarily former foster youth, will go above and beyond. If you take Nordstrom service on steroids, they will go to the ends of the earth for the best pricing, the best products, and they are absolutely extraordinary. And it's a way of also giving back, because the give back component of Doing Good Works in terms of turning around and investing in these youth, and the number of Guardian Scholars, they have 18 Guardian Scholars on paid internships this summer. And so it is a model that is just it's a wonderful reciprocal model. So I urge you to think about that. And Scott, I just have the highest admiration for you, as you know, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, and Karen, I'll leave one of these things, and I tell a story to everybody relative to that culture. And this is the part that is just, I am personally blessed with, is that for those of you who know me, I'll be very blunt. I don't really care about selling you a pen, but there's nobody on this planet that wants to sell you a pen more than we do, because we know that this purchase leads to a human transformation. And the thing that, Karen, that you just expressed and that we get to feel and see is those kids knowing that they're making a difference not only in their own lives, but in the lives of others. And it is infectious. It is a blessing to be part of this organization and see the impacts that those young people are having just by doing a transaction. So thank you, Karen. Thanks again for everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for all that you do. And now we get to hear one more incredibly inspiring story from Lisa Rodman, CEO of Agua, Hedionda, Lagoon Foundation, and how she has transformed her organization, and the coronavirus has actually led to some new and unexpected opportunities, which I am excited to have her share with all of you.
Thank you, Karen. Let's see if I get this screen up. Everybody see it okay? Everybody
Yes.
can hear me okay?
Yes.
I was very inspired by both Scott and Jen. They're amazing. And what is very cool, Agua, Hedionda, Lagoon Foundation is a much smaller organization, and yet we went through some of the same problem solving, adapting that both of these larger organizations, profit and nonprofit, did. We are a 501c3, And our claim to fame is inspiring the future lagoon stewards of this fabulous watershed. We do that through, and I stop and let you think about this, hands-on nature education. So you can imagine on March 13th, what we were all feeling when we found out that our hands-on education was about to change to virtual. We serve primarily the families of school-aged children. Mainly grandparents get inspired and parents glob on to the inspiration that the grandparents have shown the kids, and we are driven through our membership. Our goal is to have 600 active members, and we communicate to 4,000 households weekly. What makes us different from our cousins to the right and the left? We're the middle lagoon in Carlsbad. It's the fact that we use our lagoon. It is a mecca for industry and conservation and recreation. We have an aqua farm. We have a sea bass hatchery, all sitting back on this ecological reserve. Everybody has to work synergistically in order for this to stay balanced, responsible use of the environment. This slide just shows you our trajectory. Last year, we were at 10,058. We moved to 10,599 students coming through our environmental stewardship program last year when March 13th shut that down. So we were not able to see all of our 10,599 students, but we had the ability to say the numbers could stick based on they had signed up. We have since made sure that everybody has been fulfilled in our promises so that I feel good about that number. We also were launching into our 30th year of being a foundation, and so we updated our logo. So you see our old logo, there's our new logo, young, vibrant, ready to take on the world for the next 30 years. We have served 25,000 visitors through our nature center, and we had just moved from having 500 volunteers going through our center annually to 600 when everything came to that screeching halt. So how do you take hands-on nature into the virtual world? Well, I'm just gonna stop here for a second and tell you my heart-wrenching story. When I had to tell the teachers that they didn't have jobs anymore and that I wanted them to go and apply for unemployment to be in front of the line because the writing was on the wall and I didn't want them to miss a beat. Everybody at that point wasn't sure what COVID was. And I think with my 12 years of being on the school board and seeing those advanced organizers that all superintendents are excellent at giving you, I was able to realize that school wasn't going to go back into session like after 2 weeks, as they said. And I think that them getting into the front of that unemployment line meant the world to me because I know they were counting on us. We have 4 part-time, 3 full-time, and 7 seasonal teachers that work with us, and all that was really changing. So the primary focus that I could use as our guiding light was keeping the team together. So the team for me was our full-time people. And again, I have to pause because there was a moment where we had just offered a job to another full-time person. We have been 2 years looking for the right person. And this person comes along and her full-time job started that Monday. And immediately it was, do we just let her know or do we keep going forward? And because of her skill set and because of our mantra here that we're all in this together, we decided to stay with the 4 full-time people and move forward. My other guiding light for us to work with was the relevancy now during this closed part and after COVID. How would people find us? How would they still want to be involved? We couldn't go dark. We had to figure out a way to survive. Our little over $600,000 budget didn't have a large marketing aspect to it. This is a hands-on grassroots operation here. And then our third guiding principle was giving the people the ability to enjoy nature even though you couldn't get in nature. How could we do that? What could we do? And so we came up with a lot of different initiatives that helped us through this time. So here I have them all listed, and one of my little ambassadors for awesome Agua animals is here. I hope you guys can see him. Let me get him close up there. I gotta go that way. There you are. This is Winston, and he is gonna squirm on me because I have him up here. Okay, no Winston, there we are. He's a bearded dragon, and he's one of our animal ambassadors. He is not native, but we teach animal responsibility, and we can do this through the Zoom classroom. So everybody say goodbye to our dear Winston. Gonna put him away and give him a blueberry for his efforts. Yep. We started a podcast so that we could figure out how we could communicate nature through nature in a virtual way. We were funded by Sanders Tech Ed Foundation, and we are fortunate to say we have 3 of them released right now, and we are going strong in the podcast. This is one of our virtual efforts that does not have a dollar figure a part of it. And when we closed during this time, we lost 80% of our revenue. So when we went into the virtual land, I was trying to replace revenues for about $400,000. How fun is that? Grand Pelicans program. This program was designed so that grandparents and grandchildren could interact together and have a fabulous time on a 40-minute Zoom call. So all of our programming that happens here is about 30 minutes, and then they still have time to bond with their grandparent. This is free to our members. Remember, I mentioned that we have a membership drive, and then it's a nominal $5 donation for people who want to just try us out. The Agua Apprentices program, this came on at the same time that the PPP money was starting to roll out. We were first in Carlsbad to get our affirmation that we were getting the PPP and the EIDL money. So that made us very excited, and we brought back all of our teachers and we started recording these lessons, Agua Apprentices. We put dollar figures on them and launched emails to all of the schools. And every day we as a team met for an hour on Zoom, and every day we divided up whatever tasks we were working on and divvied them out equally. And like Jen, we thought we were bulletproof with having all of our revenue streams because we had our education, we had our rentals, we had our events, we had our visitors, we had our membership, and we had our gift shop, and everything but membership was gone, and we had to do something for our members because our mantra here is our members make it happen. We also, since we got our PPP money right away, we were able to reemploy the teachers, as I said, and that helped us with creating a TV show that people got to meet the teachers at their home doing nature. And we put this all up on our website as fast as we can. Virtual scavenger hunt was another just freebie to try us out, and we put this all over social media. We have one every month, and we get people to send us in their pictures, and then we post them on our weekly e-blast. I realized that all this information was coming to people from all different places. And so I thought it would be a good idea if we put it all on our website. It would help us by having people come to our website. We could advertise that they could go anywhere from our website. So we grabbed anything that was nature and environmental and put it on one page that they could click the links and go to all these different areas for access. We knew that the parents were scared and they were becoming teachers and they didn't know how to access all these things, and they were still working. So we were trying to be everything to everybody all at once. Then we developed Piper Poppins. We did this. This is a monetary effort, and it was very successful. It's $25, and Piper pops into different gatherings. We've had success with this in the corporate world, where everybody knows a Zoom meeting can get long and boring. And so Piper comes in and she explores the area. People ask questions. We teach about her. She's one of our colleagues here's family pet, and she has quite an Instagram account. We also did our Zoom birthday parties. Like you saw Winston, we have several animal ambassadors here, and for 30 minutes to our members, it is free. Otherwise, it's a nominal donation. And then if you do a live birthday party, we donate back to the schools, because we know the schools were hurting for their revenue stream. So we were trying to help everybody in partnering any way that we could. There's the birthday hat that we send and the craft that also goes with the birthday party. And I've talked about awesome Agua animals, and this was our lifesaver. This was telling us we were on track with helping people experience nature virtually. So we hooked in with the schools that had come to us, and we did it by donation only. We had people that donated $5 and people that donated $100 for 30 minutes. So they'd meet 3 different animal ambassadors. And this got a lot of play because of the different aspects of teachers feeling like their students weren't really engaged. And when they talked about awesome Agua animals coming, they were able to have more participants from their Zoom classroom, which was awesome. Our average donation here was $30. So though it didn't replace our revenue, it's still strong now. One of our other guiding purposes that we had was, if we're going to take the time to make these things happen, we want them to have relevancy in past COVID times. So I signed up for the senior project at Cal State University San Marcos, and I was happy that we were able to be chosen for that project, which has about 750 hours of a group of seniors in business learning how, or teaching us what they know and giving us a plan so that we are able to market these virtual efforts far past North County. That was really a great aha moment when I realized that the boundaries were not there anymore, that we could reach people in Maine and we could reach people in Hawaii and do these awesome animal adventures. And we could also do birthday parties and Piper pop-ins, and it was just a matter of figuring out the time zone. So the revenue stream was great. There is a cost to doing that effort at Cal State University San Marcos, but somebody turned me on to a grant. So we applied for the grant, we received the grant, and just yesterday we had our first meeting with this amazing team that is going to take all of our virtual offerings to the next level. So that was very, very exciting. We had our virtual graphic designers that we partnered with. These people came in free for us, and they did everything in their, what is going on down there? Sierra, is that you?
Yes, do you see Piper?
Yes, I do. Hi, Piper.
She decided to pop into your meeting.
That's great.
And I can't see on my phone the screen, so if you need a better view, you'll have to let me know.
Oh, we see her snout perfectly.
Okay.
Are you going to
So
feed her for us?
Yes. Can we see she's eating some broccoli? And she's sitting so nice and politely for you guys.
Hey, Lisa, I don't think we see I don't think we can see Piper. We still see your screen.
You still see me?
No, I see just Lisa's screen.
Oh, here we go. So this is Piper popping into your video. And when she does this for other Zooms, I can either answer questions and talk about her, or she just pops in silently and gives people a nice little chuckle. And now if we can see, she's eating and sitting and just here to brighten your day.
Thank you.
So cute.
Okay, can you see me now and you see my screen again? So these virtual graphic designers, I'm just gonna flip through this. They did this all free for us, each one of these flyers that you see. I wanna highlight the preschool playdate program and the after school enrichment after I get through letting you see all of these great efforts. So I wanna make sure to give a big shout out to all those virtual design graphic designers that did this work for us, and they did it because of COVID. So it wasn't something that we had used before, and now we did, and it was really awesome. If I can go back, oh no, still there's more. Wow. Okay, we got more than I even knew. So this is our nature center when we are at full pace with all the kids and the raptors and the animal ambassadors, the science that's going on. And I'm happy to say that the idea of bringing on that other full-time person was perfect, because she was able to create a preschool program that we are now adding our second teacher 4 days a week, 5 hours a day, that serve 12 kids. So we're super excited at that revenue stream. It's replacing our field trip dollars, so that's great. And then we have an after school program. So what we've really done is met the needs of the parents that are home with a 3 through 5 year old and maybe a 5 and 7 year old together. So they do their Zoom school if they're in kindergarten, 1st or 2nd grade. And the preschooler comes to our center, and then the parent comes and picks them up. They have lunch. She drops the older child off, puts the younger person to bed. She still can go home and do her work, and she only has one kid, and both kids are experiencing nature, a little taste of it in these COVID times, safely, social distancing. And it has not only replaced, but our revenue streams are 20% up from last year. So that's a great effort for us. We got the idea from the Carlsbad Ed Foundation. We partnered with them and did our first essential camp with them, learned all the ropes about how you operate in COVID times. And we keep moving forward. The other thing we did is a hybrid gala, and that hybrid gala had a Zoom component as well as a in-person. And we had each of our board members house 8 people at their homes, and then we Zoomed them in for fundraising efforts and some entertainment. And we actually were more profitable this year with 1/3 of the people than we had been in the previous year's gala that had our highest attendance and our highest revenue stream. And with that, I would just want to let you know our 3 takeaways sound the same as my colleagues here on this webinar: adaptation, creativity, and the willing to go beyond your comfort zone. And I think that my one thing that we created together synergistically as a team was hope. And I think as long as people have hope, they can move mountains, and our people here did. I'm just happy that we're all still together. That's it.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It does seem like there is a theme that we have shared across, as you just said. I just screenshotted that: adaptivity, adaptivity or adaption, creativity, and the third one. But I think the other thing that comes through is also this idea of teamwork and looking beyond the usual suspects. Every one of you has engaged with a new set of stakeholders, and Lisa, the fact that you've had more success this year. And I think we were all about to cry with you at the very beginning when you thought you had to lay all these teachers off. No, but that's the important thing is, you know, it is real. It is a real human thing. It's emotion. And so I just wanted to open it up to questions for everybody in the audience, for either all of our panelists or for individuals, but just incredibly inspiring stories. And I think we all took away lessons we can all engage and employ with our organizations, either in boards or organizations we run, maybe with our own families as well.
I think if people learn one thing, is that if you take the time to get creative and implement one thing at a time, you can't lose. You will always be successful. And then you just keep throwing the spaghetti on the wall and see which one's even more the most successful.
Great. Thank you.